Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I am your host, Matt Filipovitz. That's right. For the first time ever, they've given me the keys to the car. I am in complete control. My dominance of this website, which no longer exists and now podcast, is finally complete. I've defeated the final boss, and I am joined by two phenomenal co-hosts in alphabetical order. Bill DeFilippo. Bill, hello. How are you?
One, calm down. Two, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. And I am also joined by Nick Polak out there in Seattle. Nick, hello, how are you?
From intern to podcast host, this has truly been a meteoric rise for you. Very impressive.
They said the kid couldn't do it, and I don't know who they are, but like Michael Jordan, you just have to make up some haters if you want to get to the mountaintop.
I was going to say, can you do me a favor and can you run through every single hater that you have?
I don't think I have very many. I probably have people probably hate me on the internet. I'm fine with that. I tweeted something about Ryan Day being on the hot seat today, and some Ohio State fan is like attacking me over their rushing stats in 2020. So that dude just couldn't take the joke. So he probably hates me. But
that's one.
Oh, it's the best thing to do. The best thing to do.
So why I am in the host chair today is because I have created a bit of a game for us to play. We are going to be doing hypothetical over-unders for this upcoming Penn State season. I know Bill literally just released season win total over-unders a couple days ago, but now we're going to focus purely on Penn State and things that'll happen within Penn State's roster and for Penn State this upcoming season. So I have 9 over-unders. Again, I am not a bookie. I made this up in about 25 minutes, and I think they're all lovely. So any criticism or feedback, be sure to tweet at PSUMatt2005, and I will get your complaints there. So to start things off, Bill and Nick, the first over-under for Penn State football this season, over-under 39.5 sacks. Bill, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I'm going to go under on this one. This is one of the few rare, incredibly rare, impossibly rare, just I can't put into words how rare this is moments where someone on the podcast actually did homework before we popped into this. And the reason I'm taking the under is that while I think Manny Diaz is going to want to bring pressure from all over the place, if you look at how sacks tend to break down in college football, last season, 15 teams had 40 or more sacks in all of college football. In 2019, obviously skipping the 2020 season because of the pandemic, 2019, the number was 11, 2018, 13, 2017, 16, 2016, 8. On average, that's about 13 schools in college football having, 39.5, so 40 or more sacks, 1 in every 10 schools that works out to. Potentially, Penn State's 3 best pass rushers along the defensive line are going to be Chop Robinson, Hakeem Beamon, Adisa Isaac, 3 guys who, through injury or other reason, were not on this team last year. The only linebacker I trust to get that kind of penetration is Curtis Jacobs, and who knows with the defensive backs. And then you look at Manny Diaz's history of running defenses. Again, I'm going to look back in the last 5 years, but take out 2020 for obvious reasons. Last year, Miami had 33 sacks. 2019, they hit 40 on the nose. 2018, when he was Miami's defensive coordinator, they had 44, which led the nation. 2017, they had 37. 2016, they had 26. I think shooting for as many sacks as possible is great, obviously, but I do think this number would be a little bit high. I'm going to go a bit under.
Okay, totally fair. Nick, over to you.
I would love to say over, but I think one of the things you have to consider is, one, do you think that somebody is going to top what Arnold Ebiketie did last year with 9.5 sacks? I think that's the starting point, and I'm not so sure. I think Adisa Isaac has the potential to do that. Like, we probably thought he had the potential to do that last year, right? But I think there's 2 main things working against Penn State being as prolific when it comes to sacks as Miami was, like Bill just read off those numbers for. One, teams in the Big Ten typically just run the ball more. Like, I just think there won't be as many opportunities to rack up sacks at quite that rate. But the other factor is that it seems like when the Big Ten teams that Penn State's set to face this year, when they do throw the ball, typically we've seen them get rid of the ball pretty quickly. Like CJ Stroud, not a guy who's going to hold the ball. Aiden O'Connell, not a guy who's going to hold the ball. Peyton Thorne, not a guy who's going to hold the ball. Even Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy, probably not guys who are going to hold the ball all that much. So I think they might get close. I might feel comfortable if this number had been like 35.5. I might have been more tempted to go with the over, just because I think the talent of Adisa Isaac and Hakeem Beeman, and then if he is able to, overtake Tarburton for the majority of the snaps, Chop Robinson, I think the potential is there to be pretty prolific in that regard. But I think 39.5 is just a little too high, so I'll go under.
Okay. I'm gonna go over slightly. And Penn State had that good run where they had multiple years in a row of 40 sacks with Sean Spencer and with Brent Pry. I don't think this current group of edge rushers and defensive linemen is as talented as like the Shakatone, Etor Gross-Matos, Odafe Owe combo. But I think we can see more coverage sacks. Like, I think Penn State's secondary is good enough to get quarterbacks to second guess, to clutch the ball a little bit more. I think that's going to give guys an extra half second or two to get home and get to the quarterback. So I'm going to go very, very, very slightly over. Just feels like a place where they can live, just with how aggressive Manny Diaz wants to be, with how talented this secondary is to get quarterbacks to hang on to the ball a little bit more. So
if I may just say one thing, it's going to be really, really, really funny if Nick and I go under on all of these numbers that Matt came up with, and then Matt goes over on all of these numbers that Matt came up with. I'm just throwing this out there for absolutely no reason. We do not know what each other said, but I just want to put that out there. Also, I do have a few where I go over, so neither here nor there. But
I'm going to toss
a general sentiment.
I'm going to toss a wild card in here too. If Daquan Hardy has 3 or more sacks, then I think this number goes over. I'm going to toss that in.
We've mentioned Hakeem Beeman and Daquan Hardy. We can end the podcast now. We've
done.
covered all our bases.
Box is checked. We're good.
Yep.
All right, but moving on. Bill and Nick we'll start with you here. Over under 1.5 running backs to have a 100-yard game. The coveted Penn State running back 100-yard game.
Over. This is easy. Like I said on our running backs podcast, despite my feelings on Kevon Lee, I actually think he goes over 100 yards in the first game against Purdue. And then from there, I mean, Nick Singleton could go over 100 yards the very next week. I don't think this one is particularly close in my mind. I think I would feel pretty comfortable saying, I'm going to say there's probably 6 games in total this year where a running back has at least 100 yards. I just think that the offensive line is going to be just much, much, much better. I think the running back room is much, much improved. This is an easy over for me.
All right. Bill, over to you.
I'm going to take under, and I'm taking the under for one very specific reason, and it is that I think Nick Singleton is just going to win this running back job, and I think he's going to take it away from – I think he's going to be so good that it's going to be difficult to take him off the field enough that it's going to justify giving Kevon Lee enough carries that he is able to have a 100-yard rushing game. Whether it's him, whether it's Devin Ford, whether it is Katron Allen, whomever it might be, I just don't know if any of those guys, if Singleton is able to establish himself, which I really do think he is going to do, are going to get much of an opportunity. And then the other thing to consider here is that Kevon Lee, the guy who I think we presume is going to, if someone else is going to get one other than Singleton, I think we would presume that it's going to be Kevon Lee. It's a number that he's reached once in his career. He's come within 10 yards of reaching it one other time. He's more of that. He'll rush for 4 or 5 yards per carry. So let's say he runs for 5 yards per carry throughout this season. Do we think there is going to be the kind of game, if he keeps up with that average, where he is getting 20 some odd carries? I'm a little bit skeptical of that. Consider this more a bet on Nick Singleton and the bet against Kevon Lee or anybody else.
Hey, real quick, local idiot here, misheard and misread this question. I thought it was just 100-yard games by running back, but I'm still going over because, like I said, I think Kevon Lee does it week 1, and then I think Nick Singleton will end up doing it. I think actually Katron Allen will end up doing it as well. So still over.
Oh, wow. Going 3 of them. Okay. All right. I'm with Bill. I'm on the under here. just because I don't think that there's going to be enough carries to go around for multiple guys to be able to cross that threshold, and also for Sean Clifford to get his obligatory carries that he's going to have to get for this offense to run the way they want it to. So give me the under, and I think Singleton is the one back who gets that 100-yard game, and I think he does it multiple times.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to stick kind of in the same vein here, and this one assumes no injuries, which is a bad assumption because guys always get hurt. But assuming no injuries on this front, or assume injuries, I don't care. I just making up the rules as I go. Do whatever you want. Over under 6.5 offensive linemen to start a game. Bill, over to you.
Well, I'm going to assume over because I think Landon Tengwall suffers a terrible hip flexor injury that causes him to. My answer here is I'm taking the under on this one on 6.5. I think when you look at the offensive line, you look at who are the guys in that backup pool who could potentially start a game. Do we think, and I'm just going off of the depth chart in front of me from our lads, you look at left tackle Olu Fashanu. Do we think he is going to lose out on the starting left tackle job to Jimmy Christ? I don't think so. I think he has that one pretty confidently in the bag with how they've just been going with him all offseason. There hasn't seemed to be any noise that he could lose the job, which is the case for basically everyone in the offensive line. Do we think JB Nelson can take the left guard spot from Landon Tengwall? I don't. Do we think Nick Dawkins can take the center job from Juice Scruggs? I don't. Do we think Bryce Effner could take the right tackle job from Caden Wallace? Probably not. Effner is a guy who's been in the program forever. Maybe he is able. He's the one guy who I think could swing this. The only backup who I think has the potential to, who I would write in as a guy who I think will get a start at some point this year for one reason or another. It does seem like they're very high on Hunter Norzad, the transfer from Cornell, but he is backing up Sal Wormley, who is apparently, by all accounts, had a really, really good camp. So I will take the under on this one. I think that with how maligned the offensive line has been over the years, the less shuffling they have and the less trying to go, how does this guy look here? This guy looks here. The less they do of that, the better. And as a result, I just don't know who of those backups, other than Norzad and then Effner is the guy with the asterisk on him, have the potential to break into that starting 5-man group that it sounds like the Nittany Lions are going to throw out there.
Nicholas, to you.
So first, I assume we're just talking regular season, because obviously if we go bowl game, then that throws us all out of whack.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I planned that. Yes.
Yeah. This is the one that when I looked at, I was the most conflicted about. I think if everything goes according to plan, then I think, like Bill said, this should be under, especially if we're not gonna presume injuries or anything. But the fact that we have seen Effner play at several different spots already, and we know how highly the staff thinks of him, combined with the fact that we know they really like what they've seen from JB Nelson and Hunter Norzad, and we know that, and I think we've all read that, maybe Landon Tengwall is performing well in camp, but not necessarily separating himself from the competition at left guard. It kind of makes me want to go with the over, just because, we've seen them. I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of possibility that against like Rutgers, they decide they want to get Bryce Effner a start at right tackle or something like that. And I think that we could very easily see somebody else starting at left guard instead of Tengwall early on in the year, just, to get somebody else the experience of the start, because I think last year was an important lesson for Penn State in terms of making sure they have their backups ready and available at all times. And we've seen them do this before. Like, we've seen them give offensive linemen starts here and there just to, make sure that they have that experience. So I'm going to go over at exactly the number 7.
If I may interject here, you mentioned that with Tengwall. I think we would all be in agreement that he is the most talented guy.
Oh,
At
no
least as
question.
a recruit, he's. So, do you really think they would take serious playing time away from him, especially if he hasn't grabbed onto that job and taken it? Do we really think they would take those opportunities to grow and develop away from him unless he is just a total horror show, total turnstile guy who can't just straight up cannot get the job done at this level, which sounds unlikely?
No, I don't. But I don't think it's out of the question that they do something like start JB Nelson. He gets the first drive or two, and then it's Tengwall the rest of the way. I don't think that they would be opposed to doing something like that at multiple spots, even just to get backups, get the guys who are on the second string right now that experience of starting off the game in probably a lower stakes environment, right? Like against a Rutgers, against a, sad to say, Indiana, against the teams that don't look as strong on the schedule. I don't think that is necessarily out of the question.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I'm going under. I'm going exactly 6. I think we learned from Dan's snap counts, offensive line really doesn't rotate all that much. And if anything does, it's really usually the tackles. Like I know Des Holmes for years kind of filled a little bit of a stopgap to kind of give guys some breathers. But I think if guys need breaks, especially at tackle, I think they may even shift Tangwall out there for a drive or two and then bring in Norzad. So that kind of brings us to that 6. So I'm gonna stand firm at 6 dudes to get a start. Cool. All right. Next one. Bill, we will start with you again. Over under 5.5 players to record an interception.
So here's my first over. I think
Oh.
over the last couple of years, Penn State has pretty consistently had 5, 6, 7 guys recording at least one interception. Then you look at Manny Diaz coming in. We know his desire to create turnovers, havoc plays, that sort of things. Since 2016, Miami has hit this over every single year. 2017, Miami actually had 9 guys record an interception. So I'm going to take the over here. I think when you look at the talent in Penn State's defensive backfield mixed with how we know they like to rotate guys back there, I mean, I think you can pencil in Joey Porter, Jair Brown, Daquan Hardy all getting at least one. So I need some combination of Kalen King, Marquise Wilson, Zaki Wheatley, Keaton Ellis, Jalen Reed, Johnny Dixon, literally every linebacker each get one. I think so. So I will take the over here.
Okay. I may have set this one too low. I changed it actually right before we recorded. I had this originally a player higher. Nick, are you also taking what could be seen as free money by some?
Yeah, I'm also going over here. So last year, Penn State had 7 different players record an interception. And I think this year's defense is not only, especially the secondary, is not only more talented, and I think more in a position to be better ball hawks with what seems like it'll be a better pass rush. But like Bill mentioned, the introduction of Manny Diaz is just going to be a more aggressive defense overall. But yeah, I'd be surprised if, Porter, Dixon, King, Wheatley, Brown, Hardy, like I think all those guys get at least one pick. I think Jalen Reed could very easily get a pick. I think he'll see some pretty decent playing time this year. Keaton Ellis, I'm sure we'll have like a random, last year we had the Jesse Laquetta one-handed interception. Like there's going to be something weird like that at some point. Yeah, there's going to be something weird like that. So this is an easy over for me.
All right, I'm going over as well. I should have left this at 6.5, but I think a lot of dudes are going to get multiple interceptions, but I really think they're gonna share the wealth a good bit. And please have a turnover chain. Like that would just be so. Who's your pick for leading the team in picks?
I mean, I think the easy answer is Jair Brown. He just did it last year. He had 6. Tied for the lead in the country, I believe it was too. I think that's the easy answer. I wonder if he ends up playing a little bit moves into the Jaquan Brisker role a little bit, where he has a few more responsibilities, and that kind of takes him away from the ability to roam the field as much as he did. I'd love to be able to say Joey Porter Jr. Like, I'd love to have a cornerback just completely erase one side of the field, but I'll say Brown. I'll go safe.
Well, the thing is, if cornerback erases one side of the field, Joey Porter Jr.'s maybe getting one interception on you, you know?
Right. I guess
that was my thought process too.
Not erases as in like.
No, I know.
Throw there.
I know what you mean. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't mean like Darrelle Revis, but the entire thing is that, like, I don't think this Penn State secondary has that one guy who defenses are going to go out of their way to try to avoid. So I don't think it'll be a situation where, like, you know, we're not throwing to the side of the field that Joey Porter Jr. is on, or we're not going to throw in the middle of the field because we know Jair Brown's hanging out over there. So I think that really helps in this endeavor. And yeah, I'll take Brown. I think that's, you know, I don't want to say it's a cop-out because common sense isn't a cop-out. And I think if you're just using common sense, you have to pick Jair Brown for this.
Yeah, there's no Raiders era Nnamdi Asomugha on this defense.
I could have bet $1,000 that you would not mention Nnamdi Asomugha. I never would have guessed that guy's name would be mentioned again.
Still the coolest nickname in the NFL for my money when he was on the Raiders and he was nicknamed the Black Death. That was awesome.
Oh my God. I was watching the Cubs-Cardinals game a couple days ago, and the pitcher for the Cardinals nickname was the Lizard King. And I looked up why. He ate a lizard in the bullpen in the Arizona Fall League in 2011.
Was that Michaelis?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow, you had that at the top of your dome? That's impressive. Well done.
It's not. It's just I know if there's one dude on the Cardinals who would have that nickname, it's Maz Michaelis. So
okay,
easy, low-hanging fruit.
Fair. Speaking of transitions, Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is the official sponsor of Roar Lions Roar. If you don't know about Home Field, what are you doing? They are one of the absolute coolest, most fun, most unique brands for collegiate apparel on the internet today. Their shirts are comfy, they're unique. I think both myself and Nick are rocking Home Field Apparel shirts right now from their new Penn State collection that launched as the penultimate school of Big New Saturday. Big New Saturday has now come to an end because Penn State retired it from our pure dominance. We became the #1 school in Big New Saturday. It was never a doubt. As Joe Moorhead said, there are no 50-50 balls. We view them as 100 and 0 balls. So with that being said, with Home Field being our official sponsor, you can go to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code ROARLionsRoar, all uppercase, and you will get 15% off your first order. Not just Penn State stuff is great. They have all kinds of different schools. I know there's a lot of Penn State fans out there who went to different schools around PA. They got Slippery Rock, which is super cool. They have Pitt, if you're one of the weirdos, like a couple of my former roommates who are from Pittsburgh and don't despise Pitt despite going to Penn State. If you're one of those weirdos, they have Pitt. But they have a ton of really, really fun stuff. I actually got a couple t-shirts from them and a crew neck, and I am very excited for it to be cold again so I can rock those crew necks. Again, that's 15% off your first order with promo code ROARLionsRoar at checkout. Thank you to Home Field for being super cool and super fun. Yay, Home Field. Cool. Moving on. We are going to shift a little bit now from the defensive side of the ball with that interception question to people who could be throwing interceptions. So let's start with you, Nick. Over under 1.5 games played for 5-star freshman Drew Allar.
I am going to go under.
Okay.
And I didn't think I was going to go under until about 5 minutes ago, but I have landed on the under now. I do think that they are going to do everything they can to find a situation to bring him in where it's not just like entirely backups on both sides of the field. I think they would
handoff duty. You don't want him to just do handoff duty?
Yeah, I think they'll try to find like maybe like a late third quarter against Rutgers. Like Penn State hasn't gone wholesale substitution mode yet. I think they'll try to find an opportunity to get him just a series at least with mostly starting players. But the reason that I say under is I think when James Franklin is thinking long term, I don't think that we know pretty clearly Christian Veer is the backup quarterback right now. And it doesn't sound necessarily like Allar is terribly close to unseating him from that role right now. I think that James Franklin, as any coach would, wants Christian Veer to still be here, at least for the next, at least for spring camp when the quarterback competition starts in earnest. And I think if Allar gets out there, I think it's also very easy to see a situation where Veer plays in like 3 games and he's the first guy off the bench, and then Allar comes in for like the last 10 minutes, like 8 minutes, whatever. So this very easily could go over too. But I think they want to give Veer as many opportunities as they can give him to continue to grow as a player, because I think they want to show him that he's still he has a chance at the starting job next year, even though if the cards are pretty heavily stacked in Allar's favor. So I'm gonna go under.
So it's not like a talent knock thing. It's a roster management thing for you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this schedule, you look at what are the games where a backup quarterback could come in. Not going to be Purdue, not going to be Auburn, not going to be Michigan, probably not going to be Minnesota, not going to be Ohio State.
It could be Ohio State in one direction.
in one direction, that's right. And then I would say not going to be Maryland, just because I think that game is
too explosive.
Stupid. Yeah, and not going to be Michigan State. So you look at the games where a backup could come in. Ohio, Central Michigan, Northwestern, at Indiana, at Rutgers. I don't think Indiana is going to be the kind of game where it's such a blowout that you can bring in the backups until very late in the game. Like, I think that game is just knowing how Penn State and Indiana football games go. Even though I don't think Indiana is going to be very good, Penn State's going to have to work to keep them at arm's length for most of that game. Rutgers, sure, maybe we'll throw that one in there. So let's dog ear Rutgers for a second. You look through the rest of the schedule. Ohio, week 2, backups are going to come in at some point in that game in all likelihood. And Christian Veer is going to be the backup for that game. Central Michigan, I would bet the exact same thing. And if memory serves, and I could be 100% wrong here, in the past when Penn State has gone from its backup quarterback to a third guy coming in to take, hand it off once or twice, take a knee, they're going to a walk-on and they're saying, hey, listen, senior guy, we're really happy for the concert, for everything you've done for this program. Get on out there, take a few snaps, take a few knees, lose a few yards, that sort of thing. So the games where I'm
DJ
looking,
Crook roll.
or like Mason
Wow,
Saul,
what a throwback.
Kind of
Billy Fessler.
Now on the Akron offensive coordinator, I think.
Rising coaching superstar, Billy Fessler.
Like that,
yeah, something on Jomo's staff.
So then you look at that, say that game against Northwestern, for example.
Go Cats.
Do we think that by week 5, Penn State is going to be in a position where they're going to get one, if they are even blowing out Northwestern by that much, which Northwestern's road Big Ten games last year, they lost 56-7 to Nebraska, 33-7 to Michigan, 35-7 to Wisconsin, 47-14 to Illinois. I don't think they're going to be very good in that football game. So do we think that by week 5, Penn State's coaching staff is going to say, Drew, get on out there. Let's see what you can do. Christian, sorry, buddy, but in the games that we've seen against Ohio and Central Michigan, we just don't think you're going to be the backup quarterback anymore. I'd say no. I think you have to look at this strategically, and you have to be wary of a situation like Sean Clifford against Iowa last year. What was the problem in Sean Clifford against Iowa? It was that the backup quarterback had no idea what he was doing in that sort of situation because he had never really gotten any sort of opportunity to go into a football game, get as many snaps as possible. Unless you think Drew Allar is going to unseat Christian Veer at some point in that season, I just don't know if it is worth doing that. So maybe by the end of the season, maybe against Rutgers or something like that, getting Allar in there is the smart move so he can finally see action against some live defenses. But all the games where I think Penn State's going to put a backup, the lion's share of the games where Penn State's going to put in a backup quarterback are going to be before the bye and right as you're gearing up for getting into the meat of your Big Ten schedule. And I just don't think they're going to be putting Drew Allar in when they know they have a guy who has established himself as the backup quarterback already.
Okay. Okay. I can see that happening. Give me the over because I know
I knew the next word I was going to end by saying, and now Matt's going to take the over.
Yeah, Franklin literally said at media day this year that they have to do a better job getting their backups in. And look what happened last year. Their third string guy had to be ready, and he was a true freshman. I don't see a reason why that shouldn't be the case again this year if you have the opportunity to. I think 2 is pretty realistic. I think Central Michigan and
Well, if I may
yes,
for a second,
hit me.
why did the third string guy become the backup? Because they didn't give the backup enough opportunities so that when he got into a football game, it was a disaster.
But Vayer's already had his opportunities though. That's the difference.
And what's he done? And what's he done in those opportunities?
Very well, very
so
well.
So why would Drew Allar be in a position where he takes the job away?
I mean, none of us thought that, even going back to 2020, none of us really thought Will Levis was going to get any reps. None of us thought Taquan Robertson would get any reps. None of us dreamed Christian Veilleux would get any reps. Like, this randomness is in Penn State's quarterback room after years of consistency because somehow Hack never missed a game. I have no idea what deal with the devil he made to never have to really miss a game. And then McSorley never really missed a game. Like, we were due for this. So I just think that randomness is going to happen. And after Franklin's comments of he has to know who's ready amongst his guys, I just don't see why the third string quarterback, wouldn't apply there when it applied last year.
As a quick aside, I feel like a lot of people have overrated what Christian Veilleux did last year. If you take out the 67-yard wide open touchdown to Malik Mega, it was pretty. I'm not. I think he's really talented. I think he's going to get a lot better. But yeah. I feel like there's this perception out there that he looked like he looked like capable of what Will Levis was capable of doing, for example. And I don't think that's the case just yet.
Okay. All right. That's a pretty good point. I'd have to go back and rewatch that Rutgers game. I got a haircut during that game in the middle of it. I remember because my barber moved my appointment. That one was fun. Anyway,
we need a whole podcast about the stories of your barber because he is quite the dude.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's an absolute maniac. Love that dude. Anyway, so we're going to go from the quarterback of hopefully Penn State's future to the quarterback of Penn State present, Sean Clifford. Over under 24.5 touchdowns. Nick, we will start with you.
Firstly, this is a very well designed over-under, considering that his career high is 23 in a season.
Who said I don't research?
Kudos to you.
Come on. Like millions of Americans, I did my own research this year too.
I want to say over. I really do think that Sean Clifford is going to have a really strong season. I think that everything is in place for the passing game in particular to be really strong. I know if you go back and listen to our wide receiver preview, offensive line preview, tight end preview, I think we've spoken pretty effusively about those groups, is even the offensive line. Yes, you heard me say that correctly. But I'm going to go under just because I think the running game is a massive improvement over last year. And I think that they end up just punching the ball in on the ground enough to the point that Sean Clifford doesn't have to go beyond 24 touchdown passes. It wouldn't surprise me if he ended with exactly 24, honestly. But I think anything beyond that, I just don't think is going to be necessary. And I think they're going to want to give their running backs those opportunities to kind of punch it into the end zone to really just leave last year behind them. So I'm going to go under just by a hair.
Okay. All right. Bill?
I am going to go over here, and this is probably the one that I feel the most confident on. Here's why.
Wow.
Everything that we have said about Sean Clifford going into the season, first time he's had an offensive coordinator for 2 years in a row, better offensive line, better running game, all those sorts of things, lends to him having his best, he's a 6th-year quarterback, a 4th-year starter. All of that lends to him having his best season, which would put him at the bare minimum 24. And then you consider that last year he got 21. Okay. 21 despite playing a quarter and a half against Iowa, despite playing a game against Illinois when he was so physically compromised it wasn't even funny, and playing like 2 drives against Rutgers. So I will say, for all intents and purposes, he missed out on a game and a half last year, and then whatever the hell was up with him physically during the Illinois game where he couldn't do much of anything. Assuming there are no injuries, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to have the Kenny Pickett season. I'm not going to sit here and say he's thrown for 50 touchdowns. There's the document I have where if he throws for 43 touchdowns, he's the Big Ten's all-time leader in passing touchdowns, which, like, that's obviously not going to happen. But do I think he can get to 25 to 30? Yes, I think very easily, and I'm pretty confident that's going to end up happening, which, if he throws 30 touchdown passes, the list of people in Big Ten history who will have more passing touchdowns than Sean Clifford is JT Barrett, and that's it.
What company?
Here's
an elite list.
So here it is. Leader, all-time passing touchdowns in the Big Ten. JT Barrett with 104. Rest of the top 5, Drew Brees with 90, Chad Henne with 87, Trace McSorley with 77, Adam Weber with 72. Clifford has 62. Tanner Morgan has 56. All-time passing yards, we'll do this one just for fun. Brees is the all-time leader with 11,792. Rest of the top 5, Curtis Painter, Adam Weber, Clayton Thorson, and Brett Bassanez. One of the older listeners is going to be a little bit upset about that. I apologize, guys. Morgan's at 8,000.
Stunned by Clayton Thorson.
Yes. Morgan's at 8,072. Sean is at 7,839. So if Clifford has a year where he throws for 4,000 yards and 45 touchdowns, he's the Big Ten's leader in both of those. But whatever.
Is the Big Ten the Power 5 conference?
It's bad.
With the funniest quarterback records?
Nick, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's
my
bad.
God.
Like, we don't need anything else other than to say it's bad.
I mean, and not even bad. Like, I understand the numbers are not great just on that level, but even too, like, looking at the Big Ten compared to the other conferences, when you look at like the leaders and what they went on to do in their professional careers, which in the Big Ten's case is essentially nothing outside of Drew Brees. I wonder if the other conferences kind of look as funny in that regard. Like, if we looked at the SEC's top 5 passing yard leaders, like, would it be as full of guys that just did nothing in the NFL?
If only we have all information directly at our fingertips, and I can pull it up in the next.
It's
10
true,
seconds.
but I'm very worried about having a crystal clear video, so I'm not going to do that to my internet.
1, Aaron Murray. 2, Drew Lock. 3, David Green. 4, Chris Leak. 5, Peyton Manning.
Okay,
Nick,
that's pretty good.
Nick is emotionally invested in Drew Lock this year, so let's move on.
He's not
under for me. Too many running backs are going to score. Under for me on Cliff. All right, Bill, over to you. Guys catching the football. Over under 3.5 players with at least 40 catches.
Okay, so before we started, I told Matt that he was out of his goddamn mind for one of these. This is the one that I think he is out of his goddamn mind for. And here is why. Penn State has had this once since 2016, and it was the 2017 season when they had Mike Gesicki, Saquon Barkley, Juwan Johnson, and Deshaun Hamilton. I believe all those guys were in the 50-ish range. So then I decided to look at Mike Yurcich's numbers at Oklahoma State and whether or not he was able to accomplish this. And the answer is, in his time as offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, 2013, he didn't. 2014, he didn't. 2015, he didn't. 2016, he didn't. 2017, he did. 2018, he didn't. Okay, maybe that was just a Mike Yurcich thing or a Penn State thing. Let's look at Ohio State, the best offense in America over the last few years. Again, we're going to take out the 2020 season for obvious reasons. 2001, they didn't do this. 2019, they didn't do this. 2018, they didn't do this. 2017, they didn't do this. 2016, they didn't do this. So then I thought, what if we look at Alabama? Because Alabama has also been an insane offense over the last few years. 2021, they didn't do it. 2019, they didn't do it. 2018, they did it. 2017, they didn't do it. 2016, they didn't do it. Which is all to say, I think 4 guys catching 40 or more balls is an air raid thing, and I think it's a video game thing. I don't think it's a thing you can bank on with any confidence as being realistic. Under on this one.
Okay, fair. Totally fair.
So, Matthew,
Oh, Nick's going over so hard.
I I first of all, I'd like to say I very much understand why you set this number at 3.5. And I'm going to walk you through what I think your thought process was. Last year, Jahan Dotson, 91 catches, Parker Washington, 64, Keandre Lambert Smith, 34, Brenton Strange, 20, Theo Johnson, 19, Noah Kane, 19. I am assuming that you are anticipating that Tinsley gets, maybe 50 of Jahan's catches. We see Parker Washington stay about the same, if not uptick a little bit as a result of the rest of those Jahan Dotson catches not all going to Tinsley. We see Lambert Smith maybe tick up a little bit, and then we see one of Brenton Strange or Theo Johnson get above that 40 number. That's where I'm anticipating you got this 3.5 from.
You're
And
close, but that's not quite it.
oh, or maybe one of the running backs sneaks in there
Yes.
somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what you're thinking now. So I very much understand the thought process, but I think it's just a bit optimistic. If this number had been 35, maybe then I could talk myself into the over. But I just don't think that the way this offense succeeds is by surpassing this number. I think that would imply two things. One of two things. One, they either ignore the run game, or two, the run game is unsuccessful. And if the run game is unsuccessful, this number isn't happening for a whole bunch of different reasons. Maybe because the offensive line is bad, whatever it is. So I very much understand where you are getting this from. And I don't think that they'll necessarily be far away from doing it. But I'm going to have to go under here because history does not agree with the over here.
Okay. All right. Totally fair. I'm going to stun you both and go with the under. I thought 2.5 was too easy. Like I honestly, 2.5, 3 guys catching 40 balls seems like a lock to me. It's the last one that I thought would have been interesting. You don't think so, Bill?
I think that if this offense is humming, one guy is going to be the alpha dog wide receiver, and I don't want to say it's as one-sided as it was last year, but I think Clifford would have his guy he likes going to, Parker Washington, as his safety blanket, and then just a hodgepodge of everybody else. I think that if there were 3 guys to do this, I would not be especially stunned. Again, well, the other thing I didn't mention, Mike Yurcich at Oklahoma State, all those years, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 17 was the year he had 4. Only 2 of those years he had 3 guys who were able to hit that 40 catch mark. So it's not something that is necessarily a staple of his offense for the ball to even be spread around that much.
Okay.
While
right.
I agree with the overall point Bill made, but I'm not sure I agree with the fact that there will be an alpha dog necessarily. I don't think any of these 3 guys necessarily profiles as, I guess Jahan Dotson doesn't really profile as an alpha dog either, so maybe that's an unfair statement. But I do think it's going to be spread around a bit more. But that's mostly because I remain a steadfast Keandre Lambert Smith believer, and I think he's due for a step up.
My thing with your point, Bill, is that all those offenses had first round wide receivers. Like they had dudes who you had to feed the ball. I don't think Penn State has that surefire first round receiver, so you have to spread the ball. That would be my lone pushback there. But I'm under here. I think exactly 3. Tinsley, P Dub, and give me Singleton out of the backfield. I think he'll have a lot of catches. Speaking of running backs, well, I am killing transitions today. This stuff is easy. Look at me. Bill, we'll start with you. Over under 650.5 rushing yards for Penn State's leading rusher.
I'll go with the over. I'm a big Nick Singleton guy, as I've made 100% clear on here. I think that Penn State's offensive line being a little bit better is going to clear the way for a running back who is ultra talented like Singleton to grab the running back job and just go with it. And as a true freshman, Saquon Barkley had 1,076 rushing yards. I don't think Singleton gets to that point, but in the 700, 800 yard mark, I think that's totally reasonable. So I will go with the over for this one and pick, as the bonus pick, Nick Singleton is the guy.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, so Kayvon Lee last year went for 530 yards, and I don't think Kayvon Lee was a good running back last year. I think he can be better, but I don't think he was that great last year. I think this is an easy over. I think Nick Singleton probably gets up somewhere around like 825, 850 yards. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see another running back get around like the 450 yard range. So I don't think there would be a second guy necessarily that far away from also eclipsing this. I think this running game is going to be a whole lot better. So easy over.
Okay. I'm going to go with the under, just because I think there's too many mouths to feed, and I think we're sleeping on what kind of role Katron Allen is going to have. And then again, I think Cliff is going to get at least 250, 300 yards just on his own, because he's a pretty talented runner, and I think they're going to run him more. So I'm going to go with the under here, not by much.
Real quick before you move on, now I'm curious. I want to look back and see what Cliff's other rushing over. Okay, so Cliff had 402, 335, 163. Okay, yeah. That jives.
Yeah. Okay, final question of the night, and this is the one I think I'm most excited to talk about, and I'm most curious to hear Bill's thoughts, especially because Nick, you and I kind of touched on this during the defensive backs preview. So we'll start with Bill. Bill, over under 59.5% of snaps with 5 defensive backs on the field.
So I'm going to go under for basically 2 reasons.
Ooh.
One, I think this is just a really difficult thing to quantify, and it's so situational that I just don't know if I want to bank on, for all intents and purposes, 60% of the snaps. Basically, Penn State's main look on defense being that. And then 2, the part that interests me a little bit more here is the fact that Jonathan Sutherland has made the move to linebacker. So while I think Daquan Hardy is one of the 2 or 3 best players on this defense. I think I would take Jair Brown over him, and that might, then maybe PJ Mustipher. But I think Daquan Hardy has proven to be a guy who just goes out, puts on his hard hat, goes to work, and gives you a really reliable, however many snaps a game. I'm interested in whether or not Jonathan Sutherland making the move to linebacker means that they have that base 4-3 defense, but they're comfortable with Sutherland kicking out and being kind of a slot corner type of guy. So it's one of, again, the general thing is that it's a very situational look. Let's say they're playing a team like, look back at that Michigan game last year, and for whatever reason, Penn State is just facing a lot of 2nd and 4s and 3rd and 2s. They're not putting extra defensive back on the field in that situation. Other side of it, though, the Ohio State game, they're going to have Daquan Hardy out there 85% of the time at the bare minimum. Yep. So I will take the under on this one. I think there's just a lot of little factors that kind of stack on top of one another. And when you take that many little factors, that makes it just one big, major overarching thing for me.
Okay. Nick, I think I know your answer.
I think I'm going to go over. And I think I'm going to say over because if we're talking about, to bring it back to that same point of Jonathan Sutherland, I kind of feel like the move was made to continue to give him a role with some importance. But I also think that Jonathan Sutherland is pretty much a known commodity at this point. And in a different way than Keaton Ellis has been around for almost the same amount of time, right? But I think his move to safety is a bit different than Sutherland's move to linebacker. And I think that the move for Sutherland was an effort to hide him a bit more. I think we could very easily see him kick out and cover tight ends while he's on the field because, that's what a Sam linebacker does. Like, that's their role. But I I think and I hope that James Franklin and Manny Diaz are very aware that the secondary is the most loaded group on this defense, and that it would behoove them to get as many of them on the field as is reasonably possible as much of the time. I just think that it makes much more sense for this defense to have Daquan Hardy or Jalen Reed or whatever combination of Zakee Wheatley and Keaton Ellis. I just think it makes more sense to have that extra defensive back as the extra piece on the field. Not in every situation, like if you're going up against, say, Michigan, and assuming Cade McNamara is still the primary quarterback for them, we know they're going to be run heavy. So that could be a situation where it makes more sense to have Sutherland, somebody who's a bit more of a downhill type player. But I think that the offenses have shifted enough in the Big Ten to demand expecting the pass more often than not. And I think that Penn State should and will play to their talent base strength more and get the over on this number.
Yeah, I'm with you, Nick. I think the over is pretty much a lock just because I think everybody would agree Jonathan Sutherland has done a lot of awesome things for the program. I would rather have Keaton Ellis, Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, Daquan Hardy, those dudes on the field. And also, there's no Iowa and no Wisconsin. So that bully ball style is not on the schedule this year. So I think, you still have like a Michigan, you still have Northwestern, you still have that, but you don't have like the teams that want to gain 3 yards and have games be over in 2 hours on the schedule. So that'll
Man,
make
we really had
easier.
Wisconsin and Iowa as crossovers last year, didn't we? Wow.
We did indeed.
I didn't even think about that.
Crazy. Well, that's all I have. Well done, gents. Very, very solid job. I will be tracking these throughout the course of the year, and I will be judging you based upon your picks. And listeners, you can do the same. And again, any issues, tweet at PSUMatt2005. By the time this hits airwaves, it is going to be game week. So we should have a couple more podcasts coming out here, especially the always fun preview. Thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Again, that's 15% off your first order with promo code ROAR, all caps. Be sure to subscribe on your podcast network of choice. Leave us a 5-star review. Leave a comment. If you want to be really cool, give us your over-under picks in the comment of your iTunes review. That's a cheap way to get likes, and I'm not above it. So, as always, thank you so much for listening. For my co-host, Bill DeFilippo, I had to put Bill first because saying his last name and my last name back-to-back sounds like hell. So, for Bill DeFilippo, for Nick Polak, I'm Matt Filipovitz. Take care, everyone.